Yan, magandang
Yun.
gabi po. This is
Oo.
it. Meron tayong new special guest, So
Oo, very
I hope na
special.
follow niyo episode 14 with our good friend Professor Leloy Lisandro Claudio from University of California, Berkeley. Marami tayong pinag-usapan, Hacienda Luisita, Marcoses, paano yumaman, diba? Mark, lahat yan. So today we have also a very, very
Yes.
special guest, a good friend of ours throughout the years, one of our leading civil society, activists in the country, an environmentalist, a great pride of Mindanao, and a great representative of Filipino women, in many ways, and of course, senatorial candidate.
Our first
Reyes
senatorial
Baltueni.
candidate dito sa show, kaya excited din ako.
Yeah, medyo na tayo. So we're gonna transition more into this, no? So, hindi siya politico, but she's gonna be a stateswoman, hopefully soon, no? Inshallah, God willing. So, thank you very much, Samira Gutoc. Thank you very much for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you, Rich. Good evening, Mark. Assalamualaikum. Good evening. Opo.
Wassalamualaikum. Very kind of you to join us today. So,
very
of course,
humbled.
ang hope po namin dito is have to have a long-form discussion, hindi yung mga alam mo naman, yung mga pwede i-tweet lang or yung mga sound bites lang. So today, we want people to get a better idea about, what are your advocacies, paano kayo pumasok dito sa eksena, I mean like not eksena, but I mean the political landscape, and the arena, and why do you, of course, want to join the Senate, and what do you think you can accomplish there? Again, of course, this is a non-partisan show. We're not here to promote specific candidates, but give them a chance to explain themselves in ways that they're not gonna do in mainstream media dahil sa limitations of time. So first of all, Samira, could you tell a little bit about yourself, your background, for our audience, especially for some of our audience who may not be as familiar with you, although they should be sooner than later. Yeah.
Thank you, Rich. So we're co-town in the JC's family. Yes, with Richard. So that's a trivia, guys, na I actually adjudge si Richard as our 10 outstanding young men. Kaya doon kami rin lalo pa nagkakilala. So of 4 decades, guys, I don't know kung sino mas matanda sa atin. I'm 46. The first
you didn't have to say that, but it's okay. It's up to you, ma'am. We don't ask questions with women when it comes to age.
The first batch, first decade of my life, plus 15 years is Saudi. So lumaki ako sa isang diplomats family. Kasi sabi niya, hindi ka OFW, huwag mo i-claim na OFW ka. But the bahay was definitely OFW, mga kapatid ni Papa were OFW. So alam ko po na yung mga anguish po, mga pain ng mga stranded, umaalis sa bahay nila, binugbog, mga kwento talaga na ipaglaban mo. Doon sa bedside namin po sa bahay na maliit, hindi naman malaki mga dyan sa Saudi, it's like also sa Amerika na maliliit na mga bahay-bahay na parang 1 floor lang. Tapos outside bedroom namin minsan talagang the bodies of relatives or people who would come by, naka-sleep sila over on the floor. Yun ang mga distinct memories ko doon na I would tiptoe on their bodies palang hindi sila gumising. Parang stepping over katawan after katawan on the floor. So that's my.
Ito pa yung childhood nyo nung nasa Riyadh kayo po?
Yes, this is my childhood. This is with Saudi Arabia. Na I went to Philippine school in Jeddah. So Philippine school pa rin naman, pero I had my best friends were Africans po, mga foreigners, kasi they went to the Philippine school kasi sa English language. They really liked our curriculum. So Philippine school, life ako na.
Sa Omwa ba ang attached yung parents nyo?
Jeddah. Philippine Embassy, Riyadh, Philippine Consulate, Jeddah. So they were there 20 plus years. Ako naman, after 16 years old, nagdiliman na ako college nung pumasa.
Journalism po kayo, di ba? Yung background
so second half of my life naman, Manila. So I even had, after Diliman, yung ating mass comm, I was comm. Si Giselle Sanchez nga was higher, and then Ogie Alcacid pa sa CSSP.
Si Ogie ba? Seryoso? Si Ogie? I always thought this Lasal. I thought it's Lasal.
He had UP courses. I think he had UP courses.
Interesting.
And then he's an alumnus. He's an alumnus. Tapos, I was a UP Muslim president. Tapos, I was even invited at one time to run for vice chair, kasi nakikirally ako palagi rin.
Sa student council to. Sa student council.
So sabi ko, no, baka yung studies and all, mag-concentrate ako sa UP Muslims. And I'm proud of this moment in my life, kahit maliit na org, guys, is that it was the only one of the few 3 or 4 organizations na nagkaroon ng office sa Vincent's Hall, where student council was near us. So we were able to access as many forums as we could and knowledge and information for this small organization na linagyan ko ng konting sistema, my newsletter, so that we wanted to show UP Diliman, guys, the biggest university, we claim, one of the best, to educate them about Muslim culture.
Samira, sorry again, I don't want to ask about your age, but can we give, this is 1990s? This is 2000s?
Yes, now. I think I said that kanina. I'm 46.
Right.
So this is the second half of my decade.
Right.
1991 po. 91, my student number. So I was an activist rara there. Ano talaga, against tuition fee.
Yung
So
sa
sanay po
Subic,
ako na.
yung sa US bases po. Di ba US bases, malaking issue yan? Yes,
Kalayaan kami first year And I didn't have my family around in Manila. So talagang I was able to give that kalayaan talaga, freedom to move around, travel, and know about the issues, makitulog kung saan the streets. And then I became also active in the group called Muslim Youth and Students Alliance. This was a great training ground because it gave me a chance to interface with senators as early on because of lobbying anti-discrimination bills, bill for creating a Mindanao Development Authority or Mindanao Railroad. So these were times for me as a teenager na talagang we were also doing formal lobbying for laws.
How did you get access doon sa mga politicians at that time? So
talagang nagsusulat kami, Mark, kagaya nyo na nag-vlog. We were doing writing naman because newslettering kami. Wala naman tayong YouTube noon or mga social media. So we were really like getting appointments as in to the level na we were like matured enough to talk to them na we would even I remember President Estrada wanted to attend as guest speaker our Muslim Youth Congress, which we dedicated talaga yearly to get political leaders to give a face to the Muslim issues, to give concern. Ganyan kaaga yung
Ma'am Samira, this is also during the time, of course, you're going towards Ramos and Ramos trying to negotiate with the MNLF and Muslim autonomous Mindanao. Because of course, before going to latest developments vis-a-vis, I want to understand as a Filipina Muslim, right? Ano yung memories niyo? Ano yung understanding yung evolution ng peace process and negotiations with between the government and also the Moro National Liberation Front? I mean, what went right, what went wrong? Because it would be nice to also get your view, because in a way you're expert, you were also involved in this, and later on you'll also be involved in the Bangsamoro transition efforts. Yeah.
So yung multiple identities ko, I'd like to acknowledge that, Richard, Mark, na ako yung isang babaeng Muslim, Maranao culture, and at the same time Filipina. So these 3 layers of identity is something that I deeply entrenched to heart, because the peace talks of 1990s were the consciousness na nagisingan ko, is that I support peace talks, but at the same time, the assertion ng community ko, Bangsamoro, to assert the right to self-determination, because napakatagal na po na nasira po ang homeland. 1968 Jabida Massacre, MNLF was born because of that, by the expose ni Aquino, senator then. So that in itself, the Ramos administration gave us that chance to interface President Ramos and the Office of the Peace Talks. Na ito po yung kami, this is young people, very assertive. We'd like to tell the government that this peace talks is also for the future. Future us young people who want to make an identity for ourselves. So yun po yung aking napasukan po. We were actually even invited to input sa mga documents and even National Human Rights Summit, bringing talaga the bandila ng mga youth and particularly the Bangsamoro.
What opened your eyes? What opened your eyes dun sa mga problems ng mga kababayan natin sa Mindanao? I mean, what was the first moment na nalaman mo about dun sa situation doon? And di ba, pauwi mo lang?
I say Quiapo because doon po ako from UP, so lalabas ako every Friday, prayer time yan yung church day namin. Talagang everyone will be converging Friday Mosque sa Quiapo Golden Mosque, and lalabas kami, may mga mobilizations na rallies on human rights violations, meron pong discrimination incident. I remember during the Abu Sayyaf time, that was 1990s then, marami pong ilan sa amin ang diskrimina, nakabelo kami, hindi kami
Right.
makapasok sa kung saan. So we were fighting for equality and this non-discrimination. So yun po, it was personal to me then kasi nga ako din. I mean, minsan hindi ako makasakay sa mga dapat sasakyan na taxi or what.
Right.
Because kinatatakutan ako.
Right. Ma'am Samira, sorry. I mean, I really want to go deeper into this because I mean, we have discussed a lot about the conflict in Mindanao, among other things. But one of the realities is that we tend to hear this from Moro brothers a lot, right? I mean, Filipino Muslim brothers, and of course, I would want to hear also the perspective of a Filipina Muslim woman, right? Because women tend to also have quite a different, more nuanced take in history. Na minsan, medyo iba dun sa narinig natin in conventional history. Kaya nga history, di ba? I mean, what is the her story of Mindanao from what you understand? And in Mindanao, especially Muslim Mindanao's place in the Philippine nation. Kasi Project Pilipinas to, di ba? We are a diverse nation. But at the same time, our nation building project is still incomplete, no? Meron pa rin gaps dyan eh. So from your perspective, what are these gaps and ano yung kasaysayan ng Mindanao or Muslim Mindanao, and what are the ways to move forward on these issues, and in what ways did we get it right and wrong? Sorry, this is long form, so I want to make the most out of this and really get yung talagang deep historical understanding of this issue para lang maintindihan ng tao saan galing po yung mga grievances ng ating mga Muslim brothers and sisters, where is some of this anger coming from, or some of the hope that things could move in the right direction.
They felt lost. Lost, itong Bangsamoro people, the community, that after 1970s na magkaroon ng hollow burning, this is landmark yung 1968 and hollow burning martial law, because pumutok yung Moro National Liberation Front. And the jumping point for martial law, a lot of it was Mindanao pala. Di ba may libro si General Abat ba yun na The Day We Almost Lost Mindanao? So Mindanao, by story of migration, hindi niya nakikita siguro sa history books nito 1910, 19 plus, 1905, 1910, 1915, where
American colonial period.
Yes, colonial period. Muslim majority po ang population ng Mindanao.
7% at least.
Yes. And then as time went on, 1920s, 30s, meron pong mga colonial laws na including the Regalian Doctrine and including the encouragement of Marcos even for us to, tayo nasa north, mga Ilonggos, everyone, to purchase homesteads, lands dito sa southern population at a cheaper rate, or parang na-awardan ka pa ng bigger lot than the native. So merong ganong marke na nuance, Richard, na land laws during the colonial period were able to allow non-Southerners, non-Mindanaoans to be encouraged to come to north, to the south, and purchase and stay on the home and build up their lands. So the tensions in the 1970s were between the northern, who became settlers, they called settlers, and the natives, Muslims, and in between the indigenous peoples na hindi pa politically masyadong organized. Can you imagine the three the three
demographics,
demographics.
This major,
and my consciousness of a peace builder is that yes, I'm jealously Moro, I am jealously Muslim, aware of my territorial defense, but at the same time, itong tatlong grupo, indigenous people, non-Christianized, non-Islamized, minority at that, needed protection because they didn't have the majority population. They were smaller, they were less feudal, they were less organized in dynasties or so with political alliances. And then conscious that the Christian settlers are also co-Mindanaoans already, co-Filipinos already in the island of Mindanao. So what we did, kaming mga youth leaders then, was not really just the activism at that na rallying, protesting for peace talks to be always happening, but to actually influence the creation of a document module in the national youth level, National Youth Commission, na ituturo po sa national, ituturo sa Mindanao ang tri-people history, ang historia ng Muslim, Kristiyano at Lumad.
So mosaic. This is a mosaic supposed to be. It's supposed to be an inclusive nation building project.
Coco Pimentel period, National Youth Commission days, 1990s. So towards year 2000, marami po akong kabatch po na MILF that were part of that crafting when they were in the jungles. They were coming towards joining us in peace dialogues. Can you imagine? Nakakakilabot po ito, Richard, Mark, that I'm trying to remember their faces because some of the leaders have died, even as young as we are, 40s. One of them has died because of his dedication to this public work, activism, at least for the MILF. So my consciousness, for my identity came from that. Now, yes, I'm jealously aware of my elders tell me, protect your lands, fight for your lands. Pero nasa Pilipinas din tayo, archipelago, na binabantayan ng Organization of Islamic Conference and the world yung peace talks na to. At kailangan magkaintindihan bakit tayo na ganito. Baka merong mga influensya which nangyari nga in the past, di ba? And we need to heal from it as well.
Samira,
so my political, my social, my cultural, my overcoming.
my understanding is that in the 50s and 60s, there was a chance for us to really move forward towards an inclusive nation building project. If I'm not mistaken, but yung Sultanate of Sulu, parang yung claim sa Sabah ay pinas down sa national government natin in Manila, among other things. So there was a chance in 1560s that all of us will move forward towards a common vision. No? Kasi colonial past natin, iba eh. Di ba? Most of the Philippines was conquered by the Spanish, but not Muslim majority parts of Mindanao. That kind of changed with the Americans. But in the 50s and 60s, ayan na, we are on our own. We can move hand in hand together towards a future. But something happened, right? Yung Jabida massacre and then the martial the martial law period. Can you give us a slight idea about it? Because I come from the north. I'll just be very honest about it. I come from Baguio. My mom is Ilocana. And you know, I can say factually speaking, the Marcos years were not too bad for the north. Right? Yeah. Because Ilocano si Marcos, di ba?
Nasa taas tayo.
Kaya gumanda ang Baguio in many ways. Ang ganda ng Baguio ng 70s, 80s. There's a lot of nostalgia. And electrification, basic infrastructure. I was born in Marcos Highway.
Wow.
I mean, bumababa yung mami ko sa jeepney yata, nanganganak na siya sa akin. So you know, this is where we come from, right? I mean, just to give a background. But at the same time, in Mindanao, it has been a very big, different picture. No, nung 70s and 80s were devastating times for entire Mindanao because of the war and all. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of our history from a Mindanao perspective, or from what you understand, even though siguro abroad, and well, you were not born a lot of this time, so you're still young, diba? Can you tell us a little bit about?
Kailangan, alam mo yan, Richard, no?
Yes.
You know, of course, you know 1898, Treaty of Paris.
Right.
So one of the hugots of the Bangsamoro population was that in 1898 Treaty of Paris, binenta tayo, in-annex po ng America. Ang ating, the whole archipelago from Spain. So 1898, therefore 1902 then, or 19 before 10, ay merong Buddhahum massacre. Napakabigat po noon kasi a population of women, men in Sulu were massacred by Americans, and hindi po ito masyadong na-highlight ng Philippine historia.
But President Duterte did, right? Hasn't President Duterte highlighted some of these massacres during American era?
Something na talagang nasa US na rin eh. Parang naisusulat na po ito. So on towards 1968, that kind of sentiment na, okay, Islam is here, but then it's also lost a lot of its lands because of the colonial and the pre-colonial laws na nawala na nga, no? Yung pinamigrate nga yung from the north to the south. And then 1968, Jabida massacre happened when in Corregidor, soldiers by the dozens, part of them in the whole 100 grouping or so, part of them were from Sulu and the islands. At their Oplan Merdeka so-called plan was to invade Sabah, which hindi gusto ng itong mga Sulu na very close sila sa Sabah. Sulu is actually parang stone's throw away, parang tawid-tawid to.
Mas malapit sila sa Malaysia kaysa sa Manila. I mean, let's just be honest.
And they've actually parang intermarried. I don't know, Richard, you know that. Parang
porous yung borders eh. Yeah, porous borders yan. Like, parang kapitbahay lang yan.
Borders yan, magkakapatid yan. They even speak the same. They're closer to each other than Manila is to Tawi-Tawi, di ba?
Right.
So can you imagine that? So 1968, Jabida massacre by soldiers towards this Moro soldier recruits happened, and this was supposedly the impetus point, landmark, na nagkaroon ng rebellion ng MNLF.
Right. Si Marcos ng president this time, right?
Yes,
Marcos was his president.
And MNLF Miswari came to fore na ideologue na nasa UP Diliman na close down ni Joma. So parang may pagka, di ba, yung alignment na communist thinking daw.
Right.
Friendship, yung may friendship sila ni Joma Miswari. That's why yung alignment down in the next 10 years or so na MILF broke away because hindi siya masyado daw close sa communist. It must more of ideological sa Islam, sa religion.
So may split din within the Muslim brothers kasi meron ka more Islamic than more national. So yung national more secular, more progressive,
more
while
secular.
Islamic is more identity, etc. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. In fact, the word Moro, mas gusto ni Miswari, inclusive talaga yan. Moro includes the non-Muslim Christian, non-Muslim convert. So, but the Lumads right now in Mindanao, sa Moro homeland, hindi po. They want to assert they're not part of this Moro identity because they also have their own identity. So yun po, 1968 galvanized the Moro rebellion and yun, yung bloody war, bloody conflicts. You have the massacres, the Manili massacre, Palimbang massacre. These were part of a storytelling series rin with the Human Rights Claims Commission or Board, wherein they made the witnesses tell their stories. I was very privileged po to hear these narratives because hindi po ito naisusulat sa mga DepEd DepEd or shed material. That mosque incident where people were gathered out, tapos doon rin sila rinatrat ng mga lalaki. Niratrat sila yung mga lalaki yun. So, a mosque massacre. So these were just some of the horror stories of martial law. Sa Marawi, many talagang horror stories, bodies piled upon each other, and then PS, Radyo ng Bayan burned, hindi na kagraduate, napakaraming estudyante. So, Mindanao State University at a standstill. Main campus kasi ng Mindanao State is in Marawi.
Yes.
So, yeah, it was a horror time for Mindanao.
Mark, do you have some questions about that period? Kasi we have been talking a lot about the Marcos era from a very Luzon-centric point of view, no? Ikaw, Mark, meron ka bang question from the Mindanao perspective? Kasi mahalaga din yung para kay Pangulong Duterte because Duterte was also close with Joma Sison and Nur Miswari back in the days, right? No estudyante siya. So President Duterte is very much entrenched in this history. Ikaw, Mark, do you have some questions about that part in our history? Do you want to ask Samira?
Do you feel bad that today there's still parang big lack pa rin ng information about sa mga nangyari doon? Hindi pa rin ba na-acknowledge? Like in our history books or in sa schools, is it being teach doon sa Mindanao sa mga students?
Thank you, Mark. Kaya po meron kaming Kusog Mindanao. This is a conference ongoing po about it is a Mindanao-wide leaders conference. Yun po yung usual sentiment. Yung the Imperial Manila daw doesn't know much, no? Kaya po siguro hindi daw appreciated din yung federalism na na idea where each region, each island would have its own cascading of its own way of resource allocation, etc. So, iba ng topic yun. Pero yun nga, yung storytelling, archives, histories, narratives, guys, are not really so well entrenched sa ating consciousness, no?
Bakit, Samira? Why do you think? Kasi, of course, one concern is na whitewashing martial law dun sa basic education curriculum natin. I mean, to be honest, until nag-UP ako, I didn't know much about that time. And coming from Baguio, you wouldn't expect me getting much information about the dark side of the Marcos years. But why do you think also the story of our Muslim brothers and sisters is not as well represented dun sa ating at least basic curriculum?
We weren't writing, Richard. We weren't writing, we weren't expressing, we weren't publishing. So in this research, in this research namin on media, colonial period, we didn't have publications. Post-colonial period, we didn't have publications. To this day, we don't have like a systemic. Buti pa in Chinese newspapers, they'd have, di ba po?
Right.
The Moros didn't really have that kind of recording and record keeping, sharing of stories, narratives, and he didn't even want, pag may papublish sa, like cultural storytelling, talagang karumal-dumal na kailangan consultancy from Moros or else magagalit sila sa sensitivity. So may mga ganun ba? Oo.
Yeah. So you think on your part, you should have also done more, di ba? I mean, in terms of engaging the mainstream, telling your story, sharing your story, dialogue, writing.
That compels us, Richard, to really like participate sa ganitong platforms like your blog or your podcast. Kasi nga po, this is to raise the awareness to DepEd and Shed and all our bloggers, influencers in the Philippines and abroad na kailangan po talaga coming together as a Filipino identity needs to know the differences and the historical differences and different paths. past that we
is that
have.
pain still felt pa rin by yung mga people who lives in Mindanao? Yung the horrors of the 70s, 80s, late 60s. Do you still encounter people na nagkukwento about that time, or matanda na sila ngayon? So is that pain still being felt at the present time, do you think?
I-measure ko siya, Mark, na yung Bangsamoro Organic Law, which is the testament to the revolution, got an overwhelming almost 100% vote of yes. So it means aware yung tao sa nangyaring na resistance at saka yung HRVs. So that's why we need the Bangsamoro government para po itong corrective to redress nga historical injustices. Pero yung mga kabataan, syempre iba na yung mga realidad, they won't really know kasi nga walang mga libro on the atrocities of the past. There's no keeping of photos. Tapos kami pa sa Marawi siege, di ba? Nasunog yung aming mga bahay, mga kagamitan sa bahay, albums. And hopefully the elders and a lot of the MNLF rebels have died na. So there's no systems by which to record their memories.
Right. So yun yung isang Samira, I mean, of course you were a student nung time na Ramos administration was trying to negotiate yung autonomous regional in Muslim Mindanao with the MNLF, but for some reason that didn't work, right? And now that's why we're moving towards a different experiment, much more inclusive, much more expansive, much more empowered. What do you think went wrong dun sa first project ng Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, ARMM? What was lacking there na feeling mo pwedeng ayusin ngayon? What lessons should we have learned from the earlier attempts at peace negotiations? Because in fairness to the Ramos administration, they move in the right direction, right? Pero parang kulang pa rin, no?
One element that's unique about this MILF talks versus the MNLF is the security component. May pagka-sophisticated, Richard, yung security track nitong current talks, and therefore in this Bangsamoro government, pinrograma po yung MILF rebels to be kind of normalized or transitioned towards being
reintegration.
Recruited, integrated to the formal PNP army. PSP. Whereas in the MLF, integris sila, but parang civil service and all that eligibility issues, kailangan pang clearly threshed out. And because the MILF had a longer time, they really had like hundreds of agreements signed, if not hundreds po, with the MILF and government on the anti-terrorism operations. Because of that length, I think, of time of trying to work together with government, parang merong trust building that was longer for this MILF rather than the MNLF. Na ang bilis nag-give up because they felt na hindi talaga nag-respond. Also because they're the first to enter into a government, so they had to absorb quickly machinery of government bureaucratic work. So parang baka they didn't get that absorptive capacity. Now what do you do with billions of pesos when you were rebels? So were the professionals already ready at that time?
Yung transition, no? Kasi iba yung guerrilla warfare ka, baka magaling ka magbaril-barilan dyan sa bundok, pero iba yung usapin governor ka na or congressman ka na, right? So the transition, that was a bit. And you think now, again, of course, all of our discussion is relevant to President Duterte and President Aquino. Of course, President Aquino, under his time, we moved forward with the Framework Peace Agreement. But under President Duterte, in fairness, tinuloy niya yung efforts ni President Aquino on this front. And you were involved also in the Bangsamoro Transition Council, right? So how did you get involved in that? And what is your experience so far? And ano yung mga challenges and opportunities ahead?
So the third decade of my life was coming to Marawi kasi hindi ako nga makasingit sa broadcasting career ko sa Manila because of yung experiences ko on discrimination. I went to Marawi na lang. Sabi ko, sige nga, dito na lang ako mag-College of Law ako sa Mindanao State because I grew up abroad. So naging correspondent ako for Inquirer. Then I went into Muslim-Christian interfaith, yung sabi ko sa inyo na tri-people dialogues. And along that way was being tapped to monitor the peace process, being part of the monitoring of the ceasefire incidents, mga ganun po. I even shared the anti-crime watch here in Marawi. So in that Bangsamoro Organic Law, Aquino administration, they were actively really convening civil society to input crafting into the laws. I remember one time na I was asked to submit the names of very talented Muslim professionals, Bangsamoro, to work for the Philippine government under Aquino, which, yeah, for me, that was kind of unique kasi in every president naman I've worked with, no, in as an NGO worker or what, parang it's not as really like actively asked of me. So during Duterte, President Duterte, I was appointed anew to draft on Bangsamoro Organic Law. And the difference was that 3 months into this work of drafting the organic law, nangyari po yung Mauti siege or Mauti versus government. They don't want to call it siege yung iba because sabi nila this was an exchange of fire and therefore not actively done by one group alone. No, so this was like an exchange. So the Marawi incident happened, the siege happened, popularly known the Marawi siege na May 2017. Tapos nag-resign ako later kay President Duterte because yun nga, I felt na ako appointee niya, guys, Mark, appointee ako ni Duterte President, hindi man lang ako aabisuhan. Samira, out of 24 appointees, sasabi, anong opinion mo sa Marawi? Guguluhin na ba natin o hindi? Hindi man lang ako inabisuhan na what can you input there? Nagkagulo na yung lupain.
So you think there was no proper consultation?
I was his appointee among the 24. Ako yung taga Marawi.
That's why I'm trying to understand. You were an appointee, you were involved in this process, but later on, of course, you run in 2019 under the opposition, right? The Liberal Party. How did the transition happen? Is this because of your disappointment of how President Duterte handled the Marawi crisis in 2017? Is it about the human rights situation or a combination of all of these things? Because you seem to be willing to work with different governments constructively,
yes,
to get things going. But for you to join the opposition under someone like President Duterte, how did that transition happen?
Martial law, as you see in the 1960s, 70s, going towards being a 90s activist, martial law talaga is on top of my mind. Talagang ang sakit na nangyari sa atin, 1970s. Okay? And even if minsan si Senator Bong Marcos nakakausap on the BOL or the Bangsamoro issues of that time when he was senator, alam ko na wala pa ako masyadong narinig sa kanila na talagang what did you do to redress or even put up a law to protect the victims of martial law wherever it is, and particularly which I know, the Bangsamoro people. Marami na pong nawala, namatay without any redress of any kind. Because they didn't have a documentation. Again, Mark, yun ang problema sa amin. Nasunog ang bahay, hindi nag-report, nag-affidavit. So there was no way that in the Human Rights Claims Board na set up, God bless the soul of Chito Gascon, one of its people that we should remember on this, is that wala masyado daw nakasubmit ng claims from the Bangsamoro Muslim, especially in Sulu, doon sa HRB Claims Board. Because of yun nga, yung hindi kami nagre-record ba? So,
Samira, so how was the martial law this time different from the martial law back in the Marcos era? So we had I think 2 years at least of martial law in Mindanao after the Marawi crisis in 2017. Were there also concerns with human rights violations among other things? Because ang contention sa akin ng mga top government officials ni Secretary Lorenzana, among others, is that this is not the same martial law, right? That we want to make sure that the courts remain open, that we protect human rights, among other things. How was this martial law different? Or was it different at all? Or was it also the kind of threat and problem that you have been worrying about?
We thought that we would not have to come to a point that martial law anew and its horrors that were not yet healed would come to fore na naman there's a martial law control of which is centralized into a national government that puts itself through the military or police authority to control mobility, no? Kasi nga at that sa Mindanao, almost Marawi was cordoned, of course. Marawi was cordoned. The rest of the Mindanao, yes, pwedeng normalcy, but the checkpoints were higher in alert because of pwedeng dumaan daw, mag-escape from Marawi towards their locations. Yung mga
Maute.
Yes, the Maute group. So what, for me, because I'm privileged enough by God to have witnessed martial law of Marawi, is that I tell this to the Filipino people, na never again martial law, because what happened, of course, to set up the peace, you had to bombard the population. You had to spend the 3 billion or so expenses for arsenal for a very small city of Marawi, na after which you bombed it, wala namang ayuda that came forth. That is supposed to be when you destroy something, when you displace people, walang template po kasi guys, Mark, na batas na parang natural disaster, ilagay mo sila sa evacuation site, pakakainin mo sila, hindi po yun ang isang sistemang nangyayari. So martial law was not able to really, okay, you bombard and you protect the general population, but the ones who were inside the fighting area of Marawi, hindi po sila na safeguard in their documents, in their properties, their right to life, liberty, and property. And we are able to document that, guys. Richard, I spoke in the martial law hearing. God bless Chito Cascon again. He let me speak in martial law hearing, joint martial law, with all the defense nga nasabi mo na officials behind me saying, of course, okay, ang martial law, there's not going to be any human rights violation. To me, I documented and I wrote. And I said in the 3 minutes ko with Grace Post asking, if not for Grace Papa, walang makakasalita na IDP or evacuee leader. And I said, ma'am, just 3 incidents because you only gave me a few minutes and I was even prevented from speaking anew again by the Senate President. No, hindi na pwede ako mag-repeat. Sila, 1 oras magsalita, ako 3 minutes.
Thanks to Grace Po. That's good. That's good to hear. She's not getting as much credit, unfortunately, perhaps than she deserves.
Ilang dead were unburied. Ilang dead were unburied. Ilang inakos sa checkpoint with an investigation of her without any legal counsel, and several incidents of HRV torture victim at that, of a 20-plus-year-old na he was not hindi siya fully with mental capacity, and siya po alone,
so may mental disability,
being asked to admit na he's a multi-group and torture thereafter, and we kind of helped him be protected by us from the authorities. So I was honored, guys, na as a rescue volunteer na I was able to witness all these calls out, shout outs for help.
I heard po, Ma'am Samira, na hanggang ngayon ang bagal pa rin nung rehabilitation na nangyayari doon sa Marawi. It's been how many years na? Marami pa rin daw hindi daw makabalik sa kanilang mga lupa na pag-aari or what's happening ba ngayon doon?
So yun, Mark, kasi nga it is we thought na three martial laws at that, di ba, Mark? Richard, can you imagine? 3 martial laws, yes, security and peace and order lang yon na mapapa-address o kaya mapapa-redress. Pero supposedly mapapa-fast track din sana yung pagbibigay ng ayuda, social services at rehabilitate the roads and all that, no? Kaya nga martial law eh. Pero so far, ito pa, pagdating lang ni President yesterday sa Marawi for the October Liberation Anniversary, there was no definite date and prioritization announcement of a Marawi compensation bill and the return back of kahit man lang first batch, second batch, or a first group of people towards certain places na okay na sa ground zero. So yes, part of Marawi is back, but ground zero, which is the heart and soul, and commercial district natin, kung tondo natin yan, Divisoria, Tambakan, Menjola, where we gather for protest, mobilizations, literature, cultural exchange, extravaganza, wala na po sa...
Samira, yung isang narinig ko when I was in Marawi noong 2019 was one of the issues, the land titles, because a lot of communities live there based on traditional networks of kinship rather than yung may titulo talaga na ano. So may legal complexity rin nakita ko kasi nakausap ko yung mga people in the, you know, who are still in the refugee camp and mga others thing, and they wanted to go home kasi andyan lang naman yung bahay nila eh. Inis na inis talaga sila noon. I remember this is just before the pandemic, no? So ano yung update yan? Is there a solution to that, you know, to make sure that we can properly repatriate them even in absence of land and legal title issues or clarity for that matter? Yeah.
The president supposedly has tasked the DAR and related task force Marawi to already yesterday an announcement at noon that to award the private owners their titles po. So yan, Richard, the civil society on board will tell us that why has it been so long, no? So hopefully President in his last 6 months in administration, sana po ma-fast track yan kasi. But that for me, guys, Richard, Mark, should not be a hindrance na throughout time naman, di ba? They've been there, the barangay can testify, their government LGU leader
my witness
can testify, traditional leader, and then along the way may the title din with validation.
Samira, may I ask also, like, because one of the things I noticed with President Duterte, and I've written, I mean, if there are things that I'm giving him credit for, in fairness, I've been fair to him as much as I can. Is like, I mean, he claimed that he's going to be the first moral president. Of course, you know, this is a Duterte kind of rhetoric, but what he really meant is that he'll be the first president who will bring to the mainstream yung grievances and concerns of our Muslim brothers and sisters. In his meeting, the Avance, he used the Arabic term, God is great, and he explained to people what that means, no? That, you know, we are all children of Abraham. I mean, this is something quite unprecedented. I mean, in Philippine history, as far as people occupying Malacanang is concerned. I'm not saying President Duterte is Bernie Sanders or the most progressive guy, but I mean, as someone who's familiar with the concerns of our Muslim brothers and sisters, and, you know, these tensions in our history, among others, for me that was quite a progressive move on the part of President Duterte. How do you feel about it? Because I remember in 2019 sa Marawi, nung tinanong ko, which we're gonna go to this issue in elections, parang ikaw yung of course first preference sila for Senate. But their number 2 preference, parang Bongo daw because Bongo is kind of like Duterte's proxy. So there's still this kind of latent love and appreciation for President Duterte, despite or in spite of yung nangyaring grabe yung nangyari sa Marawi and lack of proper reconstruction and everything like that. How do you, as a progressive Muslim Filipina, someone from Mindanao, from Marawi, among other things, how did you process this President Duterte saying things that I think a lot of Muslim brothers and sisters wanted to hear from the mouth of the president, right? Very progressive statements on the rights, grievances, historical justice vis-a-vis our Muslim brothers and sisters in Mindanao.
Yung doktrina kasi ng social justice, Richard, if you are to operationalize it, yung one of the basic values na dapat na ibatas niya sana na for 1,000 or 600 years, no? Kasi Tulu celebrates 600 years of existence. So one of the basic po na I questioned is that you started with an anti-terror law, but you did not put up an Islamic studies law to complement or to tell the multi-group and everyone else that you were serious about Bangsamoro right to education or Bangsamoro right to literacy. So yung prerequisite mo to set up the institutions by which everything else will flow, an educated population that knows how to address all its grievances, not just Bangsamoro government, hindi po na set up. So the Muslims Bangsamoro in Baguio will not be recognized as a Baguio cultural haven of Bangsamoro because he didn't set up any law that will recognize, for example, Islamic studies nila, Arabic studies nila. There's no law yet that will really recognize Moros outside of the Moro homeland. So that
bakit kaya, Samira? Is this lack of follow through, understanding, or is this just negligence? Is this
parang sa kanya it's the operational activity is the signature on a Bangsamoro government, yun na yun. But the thing is, the diaspora, Richard, Mark, na hindi na nakalimutan niya yung mga taong mas marami nang nasa labas, napalabas because of the historical nga na migration from the north to the south, then yung mga south naman napunta sa north na tipong nawala yung kanilang mga and they're already living there with their culture. Sana hindi naman nila inabandon yung pagiging Muslims nila.
So, actually dun sa Baguio may mosque na malapit sa amin. So every 5 a.m. there is adhan and all, and of course everyone is Christian there, and I would say, see, this is, you know, this is inclusiveness. I mean, as a Baguio person, I'm proud to see that there's a mosque surrounded by all Christian villages, among other Marcos Highway tinto, no? Among others. So that's a very interesting thing. So now let's go to 2019 elections, because you decided to run for Senate back in 2019, no? And hopefully, inshallah, this time, you know, second time luckier, right? So in 2019, I remember you have been interviewed in many important documentaries, among others, but I've also seen some of the interviews when you suggested that it was very hard for you to campaign as opposition. Because many people make fun of Ocho Derecho, but one thing I always said is that the 2019 elections was a little bit too hard, extra hard for opposition than previous midterm elections. I don't think the opposition faced the same situation in 2013 or 2007, among other things. Can you say any experience mo as an opposition candidate, Ocho Derecho, campaigning in 2019 in the time of Duterte?
In Hong Kong, for example, I was really afraid na tatapunan ako ng tomato. I mean, I had this kind of tiptoe attitude na parang alam ko na anywhere abroad, even lalo
especially
that hindi kami accepted ASAP, no, by the people, by the Filipinos. And in the country naman po,
dahil mahal nila si Pangulong Duterte. Dahil mahal na
yes,
mahal nila. Yes, yes. Just to be clear.
LGUs po, local government units, hindi a lot of them were not able to host us. So, but the great reception really was from the schools and markets. So,
of course,
yeah, and it was a great, for me, very well organized na Senator Kiko and the whole slate machinery organization. So yung acceptance na resistance really was from the local governments kasi nga very closely, still very loyal, of course, with the not yet.
Or hindi kaya takot sila na baka ma-drug list sila. I mean, I remember very well, I think our presidential spokesman was talking about drug list, politicians on narco list. Don't you think there was a climate of fear affecting some of these LGUs na baka naman pag hinost namin tong opposition, mamaya nandun ka na sa listahan, di ba? I mean, I'm just being brutally honest, right? My sense is...
Kasi di ba, I mentioned in one rally na natatakot po ang LGUs in one debate na natatakot yung mga LGUs to host us, at isa na yon yung pwede silang i-list at in-negative list.
Sa narco list, no?
I wonder, my memory was na when we had this isang LGU host us, the next time around, check na yung kanyang BIR or what, or some records or transactions.
Ikaw, Mark, you want to ask something about 2019? Kamusta ang Ocho Derecho experience? Grabe, no?
How about of course yung atake coming from the DDS side doon sa buong Ocho Derecho ticket noon. So how did you feel yung mga bashing noon sa social media, and of course hindi kasing dami siguro nung mga kasama mo na talagang parating target nung DDS machinery, pero how did it feel like nung 2019 na pagpasok mo biglang ganyan yung
grabe, di ba?
Parang well, maybe because we were overwhelmed na rin na yung community talaga very grounded, Mark, and I wouldn't have regretted anything. Grabe po yung how do you call it, we were doing surveys and dialoguing with the common tao on the ground by early as November, December. Right. And syempre yung whenever we post something, parang syempre meron na talagang systematic na maraming hate na doon, messages, trolls. So
may mga tambay doon.
Yeah, given na yun nakikitambay doon sa mga FBs natin. And whatever we say would have its negative posts.
You think that was genuine or baka troll farms lang yan?
Yeah, well, wala na kaming time to process. We were really sick on the road. Sick on the road. So yeah, DDS, we expected it na talagang the binary. It's your either way.
I know. Yeah. And
it will come.
Did you feel safe? I mean, weren't you concerned about,
some threats? Meron bang
wala naman. Yung usual na lang na mga words siguro ng mga messengers where yung shit na yung literally.
Okay, ayan. Hindi na wala na. That's it na. Hindi na ma-censor. Live na to. This is it. Yeah, I mean...
No.
Yeah.
So after 2019, saan kayo nag-focus? What did you do next?
After which?
And Samira, ano yung basa mo sa 2019 elections? Bakit ganun ka? Hindi ganun kaganda yung performance ng opposition, right? First time in 81 years hindi nanalo ng any Senate slate. I mean, hindi naman
the odds. Talagang the odds were all the odds were all against us.
Yeah, what was your thinking?
Well, I think one of the things is that I really didn't understand the legal, where were the legal protection for knowing the voting counting machine. I didn't really know what happened to the so-called 7-hour glitch. So baka yung legal namin na volunteers nationwide. Well, I got stories from abroad that they weren't really able to vote, a lot of the supporters because of maybe technical stuff. But yung Mandaluyong, di ba, there was this na Samira got 0, but why I voted for her. So
wait, Samira, are you suggesting, sorry, this is the journalist in me. Are you suggesting that the integrity of, I like this, sorry. Kanina academic talagang pakilista. Ito journalist. Ito na, mainit na. Ito na, this is it. We begin. Are you suggesting na the integrity of the election was not secured? Is that what you're saying, or like
Richard, because hindi na namin nabantayan after that after the May 9 yeah, I left Manila. I didn't get my legal team really to check.
Right.
So I won't have a reply from the COMELEC formally, Richard. And we have history maybe soon in the few years to come.
But you did well in Marawi and Mindanao, right? I mean, are the numbers believable there for you? Okay naman.
Well, yeah, alam niyo naman na ano. I really don't understand. Then a lot of them though in that ballots now don't really vote, no? Vote for national candidates. And the national candidates know this, diba? We are the places where the tail enders go sometimes for votes. But yeah, thankfully those who helped me in what ways they helped me, they did.
It worked. Mark, do you have any questions?
What did you learn after the 2019 elections? I mean, for your personal things you could have done differently, o dapat mas nag-focus ako dito, or dapat mas
Talagang tutok ka sa well, a lot of our volunteers that weren't able to get into the as watchers, no, election watchers during the May 9. So wala po kaming ganung watcher system na ako as a candidate, hindi ko na-organize yung watchers ko nationwide, which Mark kailangan natin gawin. I mean kailangan namin aware kami na watchers are necessary. The admin candidates were like Cebu, always going to Cebu, even as early as November kami, we only had 2 trips, 3 trips or 5 trips to Cebu.
So kasama sa machinery dapat yan, yung networks of volunteers,
dapat ready po yung
election watch.
So-called that ready na po yung logistics mo when you enter into an election, so that you're ready to fly in and out already of the vote-rich areas and also get through radio and social media. Doon kami talaga syempre nanghirap din kasi talagang organized, systematic din yung yung so-called the other side.
Right. Further autopsy on this kasi I mean this is what they do in US. Pag natalong Republicans, they do an autopsy. Democrats, they do an autopsy. Did you guys dun sa opposition, did you come together and say what went wrong? What went right, anong dapat ayusin, how to oppose someone as popular as President Duterte? I mean, you can say everything about him, but one thing we cannot deny is that he's popular. Now we can debate, is it 50, 60, 80, 90? We can, but he's a popular guy. I mean, so napag-usapan niyo ba with other candidates, like, how can you be an effective functional opposition against a very popular authoritarian populist like President Duterte? I just want to get also your analysis at saka, you know, yung internal discussions you may have that you're comfortable with sharing.
So there were assessments, and the LP really and the volunteers did an amazing community mob talagang to the max. The people were asking for our posters, designs and stuff. So in the assessment level, talagang we were up against a real steel wall. How do we get through? Despite na may community organizing ka, you've reached the church, you've reached the schools, the public spaces, public platforms, and people were really like gravitating towards yung mga ATI supporters na publishing their own materials, no? Yung parang talagang groundswell. But the groundswell wasn't enough. The groundswell wasn't enough. So assessment points were that earlier, it could have been earlier daw yung names namin were furnished already to communities rather than November, December just being the parang a survey moment that we were kind of like, I forgot what did we call it? We were kind of like still asking people.
Scramble na lang eh. Medyo kulang yung forward deployment.
For that November, December was lost on that. Kasi on that December, I was already like 50 in the survey, 40. So parang mababa pa siya ako masyado. So matagal, mahirap na po ma-jump eh. And
momentum kasi yan eh. Oo, momentum.
Really like aware kami na he was really so popular, the administration. So either go negative campaigning but you're not really sure if we can raise our ranks, or just really focus on economics, the issue of the day, jobs, trabaho, pangangailangan, poverty.
What about resources? I mean, hindi lang popular yung administration, but they have a lot of resources and a lot of traditional politicians on their side. No? I mean, like, grabe rin yung makinarya ng administration in 2019, di ba? I mean, that's also, I think, a big factor in any elections.
Literally nga, ang kwento is that kahit walang tao dun sa bundok na yun, may tarpaulin sila. Yun ang kwento sa akin. Grabe po, di ba? So, by November pa daw, may 1 million t-shirts na siya. So, Yung sa amin po, really, I was very humbled talaga, Richard, Mark.
Right.
I would not have been frustrated in a way na I saw a great campaign and I was honored really to be part of it. Really, but the logistics were kind of like limited. There was so many donations, goodwill. We were doing fundraisers, but we were candidates, and yeah, we attended the fundraisers, no longer just organizing, but I was organizing. We were organizing our own fundraising meetings coming into a campaign. So syempre, late na yon, di ba, guys?
Were the big funders also keeping away from the opposition? Were they trying to play safe?
Afraid, no?
Afraid
to be identified.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's just a
Mark, di ba? Yan, maganda yan, mga ganyan. Yeah. I mean, we just have to be honest. I mean, it's one thing for the president to be popular, but funding, machinery is everything.
To be checked
not to mention,
on your BIR, di ba?
Exactly.
I mean, all those parang
nakakatakot yan. Exactly. Any moment, they can just go after you.
That's why
that's why the anti-oligarch rants of President Duterte, as interesting as it may sound, my political inflation rant, di ba? Like you're signaling, hey, you want to cross me or something like that. Now let's go to the.
So yun siguro yung ano yung gusto ko din parang tanong na kasi with the situation ngayon, like a president na may ganyang popularity and all the resources and all that, kung ganun ba talaga kahirap running from the opposition side, or is it better to run from the middle? Kaya maraming nakalusot din nung elections ng 2019 are yung mga independent candidates or yung mga candidates na hindi masyadong
graceful, Nancy Binay.
Yeah, di ba? Na hindi sila masyadong ganun ka they're in the middle Hindi sila opposition, hindi sila administration. So is that one of the reasons then na in this upcoming elections you chose to be with someone not identified so much with the opposition, or did that play a part in your decision making?
And how did you get to know Isko? So I mean, maybe we can just make it even more basics. No? Medyo nag-jump. So, sorry, Mark. Medyo slow na. I mean, how did you get to know even Isko, Mayor Isko? How was your assessment? And then why eventually you decided to join his
familiarity ko with Action Democrat, the party was the first
nauna yung Action Democratic.
Yes.
Right. AD,
the familiarity with Action came when they one day throughout the quarantine, July, August, na they invited me to join the board. And during college, post-college Marawi, I was really supportive of Senator Rocco as a campaigner. So I've been consistent there as a community na talagang I was campaigning for. So I had this long ties with the youth leaders, especially the SecGen ngayon ng Action. During that days of 90s, guys, now I was active in the national youth movement, in the Muslim Christian dialogue and all that. So yun po yung familiarity on Action's inclusivity number 3, na philosophy really resonated on diversity, inclusivity na sabi ko, this resonates with me as a minority, galing Mindanao, the South, tapos vulnerable, mga evacuees. And then Manila came incidentally si Mayor Yorme because for the past 2 years then, we've been doing quarantine work. Ako Bakwit was my organization, Manila, for the stranded evacuees, yung mga walang mga locations talaga na mga indigenous peoples and mga Muslims here in Manila. So those were the incidents that brought us together. And then when it became political na, bigla na lang si Yorme, yun nga, he was the president. And I was also invited along the way in this 1 month. Nagkasabay kami na in-invite.
Right. And what was your impression of him before you met him na nag-converge kayo dun sa Action Democratico as your shared platform and party affiliation?
He knows a lot. He knows a lot about what we, kaming mga Muslim Filipinos, aspire for. Yung
Mark mentioned
one of which is yun nga, yung recognition of our culture. And then yung cemetery project, he talked a lot about it kasi he really affirmatively talaga nag-allocate siya ng chunk na he even brought his engineer na yun ang conversation namin about his cemetery project. And I saw in him parang level-headed. He knows construction, infrastructure.
Yeah.
Level-headed ba?
I mean, this is very interesting, right? Because many people are not emphasizing this, this inclusive side of Mayor Isko Moreno, and Mark has been mentioning this also for quite some time. Sorry, 1 second. No, I mean, this is the side I want us to emphasize, Samira. No, what is the impression of the Muslim community in Manila about Isko, and potentially Kasi numbers na is not that good yet in Mindanao. But do you think that the progressive initiatives he has had in Manila will eventually resonate also with our Muslim brothers and sisters in Mindanao?
Yes, populist politics ni President Duterte really played on their heart and emotion. President was saying Allahu Akbar.
Right.
Yorme is not that kind na he will play on the emotion ng like Muslim politics na saying all that, no language, trying to play on the emotion, no ng Bangsamoro Muslims, but he will tell us that itong project, which he told me nga, he really fully invested in, so that identity, culture, and yung nangangailangan sa COVID pandemic ngayon, which is like really cemetery because upon death, hindi mo na maiuwi sa Mindanao. Something very practical can be something that they see that the Muslims also in many parts showcase in their wall, those supportive of Yorme, if he can do it, a mayor, which many Muslim mayors have not yet even institutionalized, what more can he do?
As a president,
Muslim cemetery is no law. There's no allocation. Bahala ka na because there's no
prerogative
national law.
Talaga ng mayor yan. LGUs
yes, prerogative niya.
Right.
And he was able to do it in the center.
Ano yung mga response ng mga Muslim community dyan sa Manila dito sa mga policies ni Isko? This his sensitiveness, his being in tune doon sa mga needs ng community and also respecting them and their basic rights and traditions and customs.
There's almost 10 barangays dito na from the Muslim. Can you imagine? In Manila.
Grabe.
Yeah. And then during Ramadan, he actually went there 1 o'clock in the morning or so, 12 midnight, to light up the Islamic center's lighting. One of the many symbolic acts of his administration sa Muslim Filipinos. So they, many saw these symbolic actions.
Right.
Yeah, as kind of like this guy knows what to do differently, symbolically. And structurally naman, talagang binibigyan niya ng programa sila. I talked to the barangay captains around these areas na lininis. Yung mga Nicaragua na areas na political will lang kailangan dyan, Richard Mark. Grabe. Hindi mo lang mapapasukan yung mga sindikato basta-basta.
Right.
In those certain areas where, incidentally, Muslims are located. So it might have been harsh for many of us, co-Muslim Filipinos, given that, no? I won't screen that, na mga nasaktan because of being part of that underground economy. And yet, he had to negotiate his way, si Mayor, just to clean up those locations. For the first time, ang ganda-ganda, visitable ang Quiapo.
Yes. I think that's what got everyone's attention, Mark, diba? I think that was really the launching pad, nung nilinis ang Quiapo. And the Muslim community in Manila are I suppose they're grateful for this, right? Because symbolic doesn't mean empty lang. It means you're doing some major gesture, right? That signals some deep respect and appreciation. Because one thing I hear from Isko a lot is yung dignidad, yung worth ng dignity. You recognize and respect people's dignity. And I'm glad to see that this is extending to all Manileños, no?
Yes, kasi if you can take charge of the small, then you can take charge of the other small communities.
Right.
Kaya mo na-integrate. So this long ignored beautifying, of course, those are just peripheral, pero symbolic yan because
it starts
prayer
there.
Ngayon sa pandemic and spiritual and all that can really start with clean up of the whole location.
Even dun sa housing kasi pag pupunta ako dun sa mga housing, many of the homeowners are Muslims din. I talk to them, saan galing, Mindanao, Basilan and all that. So the people from Mindanao, they can see that yung mga other kababayans natin from Mindanao na nasa Maynila are being taken care of. So yun naman ang isa ding maganda din na nakita ko.
Maganda talaga yung medyo street smart talaga yung mayor mo, no? Mark and diba? I mean, like, that's the thing, he knows how to get things done on the ground, literally.
Go through the
literally.
Talaga,
exactly. Hindi lang nag-uutos dun sa City Hall, di ba? Katulad ng iba dyan, di ba?
Ang hirap doon. Ang hirap talaga niyan. Kasi Manila girl, di ba? For the second half of my life. Almost 10 years dyan on the same locations. And sabi ko, is this the whole life that we're going to have here? And now I'm proud to invite people. I really want you, Richard, to experience the food there.
Of course. I mean, my good friend Carlos Celdran, the late Carlos Celdran, he's the reason why I got attracted back and loved back Manila. And nung nanalo so Carlos was very happy. He was very excited to come back. But unfortunately, of course, circumstances didn't allow. Samira, so now you're there. And this is where we go to what got you on the headlines and Twitter feed a lot in recent days and all. What were you expecting to be the reaction of the just quote unquote liberal / yellow, whatever you want to call them? Because ang hirap. I mean, this is no, you cannot just box people, right? But what was the reaction you were expecting? Did you expect kind of a blowback, anger, or Isko, after all, Lenny has been considering him for opposition, right? So hindi naman siguro maging malaking issue if I support Isko, di ba? And I remember he said something like, we need someone who gets things done, no? Hindi ideologue, hindi lang moral posturing and all. Can you a little bit is this also about the postmortem analysis of 2019? May mga realizations ka at parang medyo nagtugma, no, yung trajectory at saka yung estilo ni Isko?
Yeah, well, kasi in a way, looking at his communicating and his philosophies, practical, and at the same time meron siyang grounding na tipong very, very cultural sa Filipino, no? Respecting our way of life, as a Filipino, na respeto, decency, dignidad. So that in itself is not contradictory to our posturing as liberals naman na human rights importante, protection ng tao. But then Aksyon and Yorme came at a time na very, very difficult for me to really reconcile na in a pandemic hindi tayo makaka-go beyond yung yung philosophical divides and that's eating up so much.
Okay.
Eating up so much of our social media feeling and psychology and polarization na talagang doon tayo nagbabog down ba.
So put aside intractable issues, focus tayo doon sa immediate problems, parang
immediacy of
parang
issues.
Ganon, right? Exactly. Yeah. I see where you're coming from.
I mean, I nagtambay kasi ako sa COVID wards, guys, in Marawi, Amay Pakpak and Iligan, and grateful naman na, of course, I will always mention Mark Richard na liberal, tapos sina Vice President Lenny. We were working on the whole year, but then came a time na we were on our own na rin, finding our sponsors along the way. Siyempre, hindi naman can't depend on government lang, Vice President lang. And so, the young people really were my katrabaho this whole 1 year. And then they said join politics, and then what kind of politics? So will you support me? And in this kind of politics, we need they knew me already as who I am, and I was thinking if they knew me, my liberal community, my other communities who knew me then, why would they not accept me now, diba?
Nagpaalam ka ba, Samira? I mean, like, did you send the feelers? Okay.
Nagpaalam ako. I called Senator Kiko. I called SecGen Kix Belmonte that, I'm invited, Execom.
Yes.
Tapos as early as actually February, alam na ni Senator Kiko na, sir, ano bang plano natin sa, at least sa akin ba? I mean, should I run or not? Something like that. So,
yes.
So yeah, they were organizing, but they were still fine. We were not sure what's going on in the environment.
Yeah.
Knowing a very popular.
So medyo fuzzy, things were in the air, and you felt you have to make some important decisions, right? What's late?
I wasn't in Manila. Wala ako sa Unity Talks. I wasn't really like part of any discussions on how to move forward with logistics. Even Richard, I mean, logistics don't fall on your lap. Right?
Of course. That was the big issue in 2019, di ba? Tapos ito na naman nasa airtime.
You have to be ready early on.
But what was your expectations dun sa Unity Talks? When Lenny said she's open to support a Pacquiao-Isko team up if necessary, the One Sambayan initiative. Anong take mo dito? Kasi obviously, I think na-recognize ng lahat yun ang problema in the past. Disunited opposition, lack of logistics, whatever. What was your expectation? Were you cautiously hopeful na baka magkaroon talaga ng unified opposition ticket for these elections?
I was deeply, honestly, sincerely hoping that there will be a united opposition, because in the past 2019 there was no way to fight an administration.
Yeah.
And right now, if it's the same formula, mahirap pa rin tayo, Mark, no? With a very strong administration, with the machinery of government at their disposal.
And popular candidates. They're popular candidates too.
There's multiple parties right now. Ito nadatnan ko, nasa Manila.
Yeah.
Ito na nadatnan ko.
And then, Samira, when Lenny decided to run, and she announced her presidential campaign, what was your sense? Did you feel that this is going to create some trouble, some problems, some fights, or something like that? I mean, because that will transition to what will happen the next day, right? And that's where things really start going, right? I don't feeling mo when Lenny decided to run, to say that we need a kind of a real opposition.
No, I honestly thought that Yorme and Lenny, VP, and Mayor Yorme had smooth dialogues, yes. Oo, so I thought all along na maganda, baka may usapan pa. Right. But it's here, and sometimes I'm caught in between. It's a bit awkward. I don't I don't know what went on in the. I wasn't privy.
Kasi the whole time before October, before yung filing, September and August, merong ganun na din eh. I was hearing a lot of things na din, of course, being part din doon, being a volunteer din doon, na mukhang doon dapat papunta eh. Na magsasama dapat, na may ganitong dami ng senador, may ganito ito yung VP, si certain ganito yung VP from that party, and so meron na talagang parang nabubuo dapat na ganun eh. And I think yung pag-announce nung Thursday. Kasi a few days before, nag-file pa siya sa we were talking about this, 'di ba? Sa Magaraw eh. So meron pang
baka mag-governor siya or
the towns from Camarines Sur were really hoping that she would run for governor kasi kakalaban doon sa mga Villafuerte. So merong ganong. So up until that time people were still 50-50 kung tatakbo ba si Lenny or hindi. Tapos yun nga,
and sila mismo nagsasend ng mixed signals, right? So I mean, Mark, thanks for saying that too, because I think the side of the Isko supporters and all is not being heard a lot. It's mostly about Marcos versus the rest, or Lenny. But thank you for pointing that out. And ikaw, Samira, I mean, what do you have to say also about what Mark is saying? Because Mark is saying na mukhang may expectation talaga si Isko na. Kasi yun nga eh, I think Isko really got annoyed or triggered nung nakita niya nag-hashtag Isko step down. Yun ba yun? Parang
withdraw
something
Isko,
like that.
Withdraw Isko.
Oh, withdraw Isko or something like that.
But I think it's more than that eh. That's just one. Kasi before that, parang a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before that, may mga iba't ibang lumalabas na eh. May mga yung 1 billion na offer, 1 billion na request, merong. So parang ang daming masyadong coincidences na nangyayari around that time.
What do you mean? Coincidence? Can you spell
coincidence
it out?
na tira sa kanya. Parang
Kay Isko.
Kay Isko.
So, right. So you were saying the ground was being massaged to attack Isko.
Yun yung
sorry, I just want you to spell it out because I mean I know we're polite and nice unlike some other side. But I think we have to get
I understand.
This out,
so I'm saying this then kasi I understand din na si Ma'am Samira is yung like she said, she's not privy doon sa mga conversations,
of course,
sa mga negotiations that's happening sa ganon, pero yun yung narinig ko. So punta tayo siguro doon sa
kasi Samira, nag-trending yung mukha mo na medyo hirap na hirap ka pag nung nagsi-speech na si Yorme the next day. And I'll be honest, I was a bit surprised also. Medyo magaspang eh. I mean, I'll just say it honestly, right? For me, I didn't expect that coming from Isko. And I could see that my anger, my frustration, wow, what's going on here, diba? Now I understand a little bit, of course. But ikaw, at that moment, real time, like, what's going on? And then yung nagte-trending na yung mukha mo doon na nagwawala si Isko na sa kaganyan kayo. What do you have to share with our friends? Because our audience is mixed, but mostly it's Lenny Isko supporters, right? So let's just be honest about this, Yeah,
kasi ang interactions namin were very civil and very philosophical in a way. Yung kanyang approach in the sectoral dialogues and meetings na natin ko. And MWF, yung mga oath takings ng mga officials who are taking their oath. no, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, doon sa same location for Action Democratica. So there was a lot of positive goodwill that was happening. But then I think along the way that week rin was already the results, no? Anytime soon there would be a declaration by VP, no?
Yeah.
And so there was that moment na 3 questions or 3 sa open forum na dinidiin siya on Marcos if what was his real position. So parang I think there was that irritation, no? That what was inconvenient for me kasi was we were asked to stand behind him, not knowing that ito po yung kanyang irritation na lalabas. Ano?
And I mean, what is your understanding? Is Isko feeling hurt na parang medyo bias yung ibang reporters sa kanya, that they're trying to portray him as an apologist or something like that? Or again, we're just saying it based on our understanding. Pero ikaw, based on your understanding, Samira, I mean, why do you think? And yun nga, it didn't stop there. Dun sa Batangas ulit, di ba? I mean, to a point now we're hearing some of our friends, right, suggesting that, oh, I've heard this from Duterte in 2016. I'm hearing something similar. I'm just gonna say who this is, right? I mean, friends in Rappler, right? I've been saying something like that. And hindi ko pa binasa yung article. Like, I saw pa lang sa title, parang, okay, I see where this is going. Ikaw kasi, I know you're also in a very difficult position. I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from, but why would you think that? Kasi yung grabe yung rhetoric Like, I mean, may mga parang yellow tard-ish, tapos meron yung elitista. Like, these are not the things I was hearing from Isko for a long time, And this is what I expect from the camp of DDS, Duterte. Not even from Marcos camp, I'll be honest. I don't get that from the Marcos camp a lot. But so like, that's why I think parang, I mean, I really hope there will be some communication smoothing over as far as Isko is concerned. Kasi sayang, because there's so much progressiveness to a lot of his initiatives, socialized housing, or what he's doing with the Muslim community. Nasasayang ako. But I understand this was also very difficult for you, and you were really on the front line. How are you processing this? Parang hindi pa, may gigil pa nanggigigil na si Orme, di ba? Lalo sa Batangas din, grabe yung rhetoric. I was like, what's going on here? Like, grabe tong galit niya.
Yeah, kasi Richard nga, the narratives na he was boxed in, for that at least
boxed in. Okay,
that whole thinking, we're boxed on stereotype na ito nga Marcos apologies and parang dinidiin on that So baka doon siya na
trigger,
yeah, I think that triggered him. And prior to that the backdoor meetings na it didn't both successful. So I wouldn't really know. That's why I actually asked Action President na sana po there's a way by which mapaprocess namin together.
Yeah. Bad communications, I'm sorry.
Ako personally, kung yung basa ko din doon sa whole I talk about this sa vlog ko din and pero galit si Isko kay Lenny Galit
Can you say more about that? Kasi I think people are not hearing that side. Yeah, go Mark, please.
Galit siya kay Lenny. Kasi you were talking na parang baka he was being put into as a Marcos apologist.
Binabox in kino-corner siya.
Yung pagiging ako on that topic na pag-usapan din namin ni Ma'am Samira yan when I interviewed her last Monday. That was part ng kanyang communications na not trying to trigger yung isang side or yung isang side ng argument and all that. So yun So that was part ng kanyang communications na ginagawa. Pero yung pagdating kay VP Lenny, I think may galit talaga galit siya talaga I heard yung sa mga nangyari, 'di ba, nakwento ko and marami pa ako narinig behind the scenes na some of them I cannot say.
Of course. I mean, whatever we're comfortable sharing.
Pero yun nga, kaya ito ikwento ko na din siguro after nung nangyari nung samehan, I reach out na din doon sa kila Miss Samira kasi yun nga I thought nga na nasaktan siya after nun sa nangyari doon. She's the one.
Can I share also something from the other side because I'm in touch with different sides, right? Let me put it this way. The week before yung filing of candidacy and everything like that, the discussion I'm hearing is that there was a genuine effort to put Pacquiao and Isko together. but mukhang Isko was less gung-ho on going after Marcoses or even the Dutertes, while Pacquiao was a little bit more gung-ho on that. So medyo parang nakapos some people in the opposition, in the Liberal Party, na parang we don't think Isko will raise the issues na we want him to raise in the way we want him to raise, no? So actually, in turn na healing president, I knew about it before it even came out.
I was talking about that then kay Ma'am Samira. Sorry to cut in.
Yeah, sure.
Yung sa part nung kay Marcos nga, I was saying to her na if Yorme looks a little neutral now pagdating kay Marcos, sabi ko, imagine what will happen kapag campaign season na. When kunyari Isko magtuloy-tuloy yung kanya pagtayo, it is going to be Isko versus Marcos. So there was no way that he will remain kung if he sounds neutral ngayon or if he sounds there's no way na magganyan yung mangyayari kasi eventually ganun din naman papunta. Magkakatapat din naman. The road to Malacanang will pass through Bongbong
So don't
Marcos.
Force the fight now. Parang yung sinasabi ni Mark,
there's a right timing for
chill
everything.
lang kayo dyan. Yeah. No, but because Mark, I think the problem here is the purity test, which we'll discuss later on in another episode, na hindi talagang opposition si Isko na tunay na, well, he's not really positioning himself as an opposition, but I think that's what some people are trying to do, to portray Isko as pa-safe, pa-neutral. Essentially, the new Poe, the new Grace Poe of this elections.
I would always talk about this sa vlog ko. And if you remember, Ma'am Samira, this is one of the things that I said nung last Monday when nagkamit tayo doon sa Kapitolyo, na ang situation now sa Philippines, there's growing strength doon sa pro-martial law side. For whatever reason, kung dahil man sa propaganda nila o dahil sa kahinaan ng anti-martial law side, kung naman, the pro-martial law side is winning. And
or less anger at martial law side or something like that. Or less anger, I would
pero
say.
pro talaga eh. But they like
this is
YouTube.
Maybe it's your bias because you're on YouTube and dahil mga pro-Marcos there.
Sa Facebook and sa Twitter lang yung safe, but everywhere else. The people, you go to the streets, yung ngayon, yung mga kalye survey na magsasalita sa streets, there, meron eh. I mean, it's winning eh. And ang sinasabi ko nga na it can't be solved for the anti-martial law side. This can't be solved in 8 months. Hindi mo pwedeng gamitin yung 8 months just to solve the whole martial law issue that you're going to get a large part of the population who thinks that hindi masama yung martial law, then bring them over to your side. Lalo na kung nakaka-create ng mistrust against the Liberal Party camp. Kasi ganoon ang ginawa for 5 years ng ng pro-martial law camp eh. They made a talagang large campaign to tone down or pahinain yung mga kampo who are against martial law. So ganun yung parang nangyayari. So I was telling her na the main muna, instead of fighting over the reality or yung katotohanan ng martial law, is to stop Bongbong Marcos first. Yun muna. Yun muna.
Which is what Isko said, di ba, na pag nanalo si Marcos, pag away-away tayo, lalong lalala itong situation ng authoritarian nostalgia. And going back to Samira, because Samira, the concern I have, and this is my column actually tomorrow in Inquiry, is that we've been somewhere like this before in 2016 when the Mar-Poe split happened, right? I'm not saying exactly the same, like Mar si Lenny or Poe si Isko, but there are echoes of that, right? I mean, are you worried, Samira, na mag-split ng itong, let's just call them alternative candidates, non-admin candidates. Let's not even use the term opposition. Yeah. Non-admin candidates, because Marcos is more or less the admin candidate. Now, whatever Sara wants to do, substitution is. Are you worried, Samira, na magkaroon ng some bitter, toxic split between the Isko and Isko and Lenny camp and all, and that eventually this will make it even easier for Bongbong Marcos presidency next year? I mean, do you have that kind of concern? Or you want to say something maybe to some people who are attacking you and Isko and all, like, inay lang kayo, eye on the ball. This is not the ball. This is just, the real ball is somewhere else. tahimik kasi BBM, di ba? As Napoleon said, when your enemies are making mistakes, don't stop them. Let them just go, right? That's what I'm saying, no? I mean, as someone who's following the Marcos side a lot, no? Ikaw, Samira, what do you have to say? Thanks, by the way, Mark, for your input on that. Very important.
Yeah, syempre, ang analysis natin, especially I was on the ground sa Mindanao, was that it's not going to succeed really if the opposition and the alternative candidates, if they're not together.
Right.
But on the ground, it was less political kasi, guys, hindi siya masyadong, it's either administration ka or not, So,
I mean, personality based or platform, like
it'll be very, very personality based. And when it came nga na Isko was already positioning nga as presidential, bigla na lang dumami yung materials along the way sa highway, at least from our end, no, sa Marawi, going to Lanao, So ang bilis po ng pag-capture ng community that he actually was offering, no, an alternative positioning. So going to national on how another polarizing environment can happen, itong multiple parties can work to an advantage na pwedeng more choices. And Bongbong Marcos cannot easily say na just because high numbers siya, social media wise, Mark, na siya na on top. There's more to it than meets the eye again. Definitely. And I don't know again if the unity talks are already have the foresight of that. They know, I'm sure, that if they don't unite somehow and tactically do otherwise by February, January, then they're gonna lose and face the same reality.
So may time pa rin. That's what I want to hear.
And I always say this, this is where I think Senadora or Ma'am Samira plays a very huge role.
Exactly. That's why we invited you also. It's like,
because she
you're the bridge.
Oo parang a bridge Kaya siya yung naiipit ngayon. Pero
kasi bridge ka rin.
In the mga susunod na kasi nakita naman niya yung beauty ng both camps, nakita din niya yung mga kakulangan ng both camps, nakita din niya yung so I think it's important sa ngayon mainit pa so
masyado bang mainit yung mga attack? Samira, na-shock ka ba na
talaga naman, grabe, no? Hindi sadya, guys, grabe, Mark, grabe. Hindi ko sadya na mainit, pero it comes along the territory.
Si
I know masakit yan kasi
si Richard sanay na yan sa Twitter.
2019 na-troll din ako ng mga friends natin. So
ako hindi pa nila ako kilala sa Twitter Huwag nyo na akong ikwento doon. Parang ayoko din ma-experience.
Sige, ituloy mo yung mga ginagawa mo. Tag mo ako. Kasi grabe yung attack sa Twitter compared sa Facebook and YouTube. I think worse yung Twitter. Kasi cobra. Ganun lang yung Facebook, may tiger, may dragon. Ito hindi, cobra. Ganyan lang grabe ang sakit mag-attack, grabe man layot yung mga
personalan.
Grabe, and then grabe.
Pero grabe po, I'd like to mention Twitter, guys, kasi there was such an overwhelming talaga po, grabe po, family relationship ko 2019, di ba? Parang naging number one Twitter pa ako at that time, really after the May election, ang daming overflow of PM sa akin sa Twitter na sorry we weren't able to vote, ganyan because we weren't of age. And I'm hoping through your podcast, guys, na please consider still reading through what we have, what we can offer po.
There's still thank you so much, Samira. Do you have some other questions, Mark? Medyo matagal na to, but I hope we satisfied. I mean, we did what we told you that we do. Na talagang malalim po, deep. Long-form discussion pong meron kami dito. And then we'll see if we can chop also some parts separately. But we will upload this, di ba, Mark, tonight, no? Hopefully live on Spotify and podcast. And then the video version should be out also soon po. Thank you very much, Ma'am Samira. Mark, do you have any question? Do you have any question for Ma'am Samira?
Gusto ko lang sabihin na na nagsabi naman ako kay Ma'am Samira na I will try my best. Of course, ang aking namang platform, ang aking viewers ay yung matatawag na base ni Isko.
Solid Isko,
to get to let them get to know you more. The way na I see you, the way na we see her, Richard, and of course. We would really need someone like sa Samira Gutoc sa Senado.
Sa Senado, sa ating politika, in helping nation building. So hopefully the Senate will just be one important step in the bigger goal that you have, for a more unified, inclusive Philippines. Maraming salamat.
Thank you,
soon
Rich.
to be Senator Samira Gutoc. God bless po. Thank you very much. And thank you very much also for our viewers, everyone. Tuloy-tuloy ang discussion natin. This is our episode 15 interview with senatorial candidate Samira Gutoc. We'll have more of this, so please stay in tune. God bless. Maraming salamat.